lost to Virginia to go to the Sweet Six or to go to the Final Four, and I had turned the ball over with a couple minutes to go. Came back and hit a couple jump shots, but I digress.
Okay.
All of a sudden, we're sitting there, and I hear boom, 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 and eggs are pelting our window. And I look, and I see a bunch of guys running out. It didn't stop us. We kept drinking beer and playing spades. We love to play spades. So
it's great.
It's a true story.
Hey.
Swear to God, it's a true story.
We need to get back to that era at every college campus, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah. Now you lose a game, they'll come over and grill for you because they feel sorry for you.
Oh. At Indiana, here's what they do. Seriously, I got people saying, well, the kids are really trying hard. Really? So at Indiana, back in the day, we used to worry if we had to practice after a loss. These guys, this is a true story, these guys go to an event. Like some slap blank booster will have an event where they can make $200 if they show up after a freaking loss. My son coaches at Illinois State. I was bringing his Christmas presents to him at Evansville this weekend. I go, hey, if you lose, I ain't giving you the Christmas presents because none of your players or your coach want to see you with Christmas presents after a loss. They won, so I gave them the presents. We got to go back to that era, boys. We got to go back to that era.
Dan, we will be coming back to you for another visit on
I'll never mess with your grill, Dan, I promise. No matter what you do or say, I'll never mess with your grill.
That's right. We'll be chatting with you soon on Don't At Me.
Thanks, fellas. And thanks for all you're doing for me on Don't At Me. You guys are awesome, man. Thank you.
We love coming on the show.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, same here with you. Thank you. There's Dan Dakich bringing it today.
He's fired
Don't
up.
at him.
I feel like we got an even heightened version of Dan this hour of the day. A little bit later in the afternoon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we hit on two topics. The Colts.
He was ready to go.
Hoosiers.
He was ready to go.
Coming up, a Christmas fair or foul for, I think it's a layup, but we'll see. We'll see where we are on this. And we've got headlines across the NFL, plus John McClain in about 30 minutes. All of that and more coming up on OutKick 360.
Back to the Christian thing in the broad picture. Your father, how many kids, if you don't mind saying, do you have several kids, one kid?
Seven children.
You have 7 children, so you're a big family, man. I did not know that.
Yes.
How many sons? Because this is what I kind of want to dig into.
I have 5 sons.
5 sons, perfect. As a Christian man, how do you feel, like, what is your job when it comes to raising young men in modern America?
Number one, to teach my boys to know and love Jesus. That would be their primary identity in life. To everything else being completely secondary to that. That is number one. Number two would be to make them capable men, right? To make them well-rounded, to make them, able to handle themselves, to make them strong physically, able to fight, able to shoot, able to protect their future, their own families. A great quote, Robert Heinlein, and I'm going to butcher it, but I will attempt it anyways. He basically says that, a man should be able to plan an invasion, change a diaper, cook a meal, build a house, he just goes down this list of, you should be able to do all these things as a man. And then at the very end, he says specialization is for insects. And I did not always think that. All right. I mean, there was times in my life where I didn't care about learning how to weld or be mechanically inclined or any of these other things. I was like, oh, I just want to be a commando. I just want to go and shoot and do hard stuff. And that was a mistake. I mean, I think I've said this before on, I did 2 ship deployments, 2 ARG deployments as a young frogman. And honestly, I was arrogant at the time. And man, here you're on a ship, which was kind of miserable. And I had a bad attitude about it instead of, because I'm like, I should be on land training more. And instead of going, okay, this is where I'm at. Yeah, I don't have to like it, but there's all these master machinists and welders and guys that are, in charge of charts and navigation, to navigate across the globe. And here I could have, if I would have showed just a little bit of interest, those guys would have been happy to be like, oh yeah, I'll teach you how to, how to weld. I'll teach you how to run a lathe, like all these things. That now I'm like, man, I want to learn all that stuff. I want to be able to do everything. And some of that's reinforced now. Kind of, we live out on a little bit of a farm, so you do need to be able to, when stuff breaks, you need to be able to fix it yourself, and so there's a lot of value in that. So I want, number one, I want my boys to know and love Jesus, and then number two, to be capable. It's actually, so we do a program called Father-Son Ministry, where it's gone through different iterations. Currently, the way we run it is you show up, we pray, we say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we start training. And that was very deliberate right there, that, hey, we honor God first, then we honor our nation, and then we start to train. Most of the time we do jiu-jitsu. So that's been just super cool, having the boys go from it just looking clownish, them rolling around, to, man, they're, some of those boys, I will actually, break a sweat rolling with them now, and they will absolutely catch some guys with triangles and arm bar. Like, they're actually learning jiu-jitsu.
OutKick 360 rolls on. So, according, Colin Warner sends us some great, just non-sports related articles, right, and studies. And do you believe that
he's a bit of a researcher?
41% of Americans still have Christmas decorations up.
So when I think about that percentage more and more, it does surprise me. Now, I was at church on Sunday, and I heard this for the first time ever. Never knew this. But the thought is, if you don't take your Christmas decorations down on Christmas night, this is from a church history standpoint. If you have your home decorated at all, you're supposed to leave it up until January 6th. That is Epiphany. If you leave it up past January 6th, you're supposed to leave it up until Lent. Lent starts, Hutton, on February 22nd. So this is more of an Eastern, I think, Christian ideology of how you schedule out the year in terms of decoration. But that's the first time I heard that.
It sounds like it's
now,
just a lazy ideology.
Let me give you my answer. We started taking Christmas decorations down the moment we got back from Nebraska. And we left the day after Christmas, so we couldn't do it the next day. We left at 5 a.m., but the moment we got back, Christmas decorations started going down. Here's what you do at the start of the year. You eliminate. You declutter. You get things set and clear for the next year and start taking things away. You don't leave decoration up. That's the last thing anyone should do.
So here at 6th and Peabody, they go all out with their Christmas decorations.
And yesterday it started going down.
Yeah, yesterday they came in, the staff yesterday morning started and took everything out. So that was January 9th. Growing up, we would leave ours up until New Year's, right after January 1st, January 2nd. But that was because, as kids, we had like a train set and everything else we wanted to keep up, right? And we were out of school. So we, wanted to enjoy the Christmas break.
I think, December 26th is a little bit extreme. I think having it down New Year's, right around January 1st is a good time to bring it down.
So,
that's a reasonable time.
How many people in studio actually have Christmas decorations up? I know we're about to bring Davey in. So Colin does. Colin does as well. Anyone in the back?
Brooks
yes.
Brooks says
yes.
Brooks no heathen.
Matt, did you even have a tree?
Of course she has Christmas decoration.
He did have a tree? Did not have a tree. Very smart. Very smart. By the way, they make these artificial trees now that are half.
Hold on. Is Matt waging war on Christmas in front of our very eyes? Come on, Matt.
I had a wreath on my door.
Oh, nice wreath. That's Matt. I'm on your side, man.
Is the wreath still up? Did you take it down? It's a wreath, Matt. It's a wreath. You can just remove it right now when you get home. It's not a lot of work.
Davey, you have your Christmas tree up, but for I'm also on your side here, a decent reason.
Yeah, so I didn't put the tree up. I'm not going to be the one to take it down. So I'm really.
It's going to be up all year.
I'm also this is also the first time I've lived at this residence, so I'm really just curious to see how long this goes. I'm one of those people, I'll just sit back, I'll watch, and I'll see what happens.
Are you in a nursing home?
It's a very odd setup, though, Dave, because you got a platonic male roommate situation.
Correct.
Right?
There's three of us.
But do you put your own decorations up on the tree? You guys get together and drink spiked eggnog and put your own childhood decorations up? Or was it all him?
Showed up after leaving the studio one day, and I was like, oh, there's a tree up. I was like, oh, that's cool. And now we just kind of wait and see. I used to have like a Charlie Brown Christmas tree, you could just sit on like the counter, and that was it for me. But I'm not the type that's like going to go all out. My neighbors, I know for a primary complaint, I was complaining about the lights still being up. Those are finally down now, so I can sleep in peace now.
I think we all now know who the alpha is of Davey's house. It's that guy who put up his own Christmas decorations.
Oh, I disagree. I think it's Davey.
And just
Davey
said,
of the house.
I'm going to do this.
Some dude that lives with another guy just put up a Christmas tree.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe he might like Home Alone, Hutton. He might like to have the Christmas spirit around him and have a tree up at the same time.
Kevin McAllister had a very large family.
I'm not taking down some other dude's Christmas tree. He put it up. He's going to take it down whenever he wants.
Did it bear gifts?
If it goes a little longer, Davey, I would remind him that Christmas tree is still up and he should take it down. I'd give it another couple days.
Fair point.
It'll be up for a while.
Establish dominance, Davey.
I'll keep you posted.
If you're not the alpha now, become the alpha by telling him that damn tree's coming down right now.
NFL head coaching openings next.
Visited our southern border for the first time in his career yesterday. But when I say southern border, I mean that very loosely, given he saw and did far less as president of the United States than any one of our Fox News border correspondents see and do on any given day. But how nice of them to clean up the homeless encampments, by the way. Wouldn't want the reality of the situation to aesthetically F up the optics, right? But this whole sham trip is too little, 2 years too late. He should have just met with the cartels and said, you're welcome, since he's funding them and funding them well. Since he took office, over 5 million illegals that we know of have entered our country to live in the shadows and suck it and we the taxpayers dry. This president nor his border czar Kamala give a damn about the invasion, and neither do the so-called Republicans who signed on to that $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill that funded the invasion, but not the protection of our southern border. And now the Republicans have the House majority. If they allow another penny to go to DHS without a border enforcement mechanism, let God strike their political careers dead on the spot. Securing the border is not that hard, folks. Trump was well on his way to doing just that before Joe came in and undid it all. So let's start out by impeaching Mayorkas, who not only lied about that whole whipping scandal, but has sold Border Patrol agents down the river every single day since he's held that post. This is elementary school stuff. First, we need a physical barrier that keeps these illegals out. Yes, the wall. States should not be forced to use shipping containers to protect our country while the Democrats leave it defenseless and encourage the free-for-all. Then, we need to send more judges to the border to process these BS asylum claims on site and on the spot. 9 out of 10 don't qualify for asylum, so turn them around and send them right on back, because I guarantee you they'll stop trying to come here under false pretenses if they know they're going to get turned around the moment they fraudulently step foot on our soil. Next, reinstate Remain in Mexico, another great way to de-incentivize people with BS phony-ass asylum claims from making the journey. That'd also make Mexican officials rise to the occasion and step up to the plate. Guess what? Mexican citizens don't want their cities and streets burdened with migrants either, but right now they just send them right on through, so we have to deal with it. So cut off that luxury, and Mexico will play ball. Threaten tariffs like Trump did, and they'll play the flippin' World Series of ball, believe me. But the Democrats don't want to fix this because they designed it. They want to pump illegals into this country, give their corporate donors a massive low-wage workforce, use their beloved mail-in voting system to get illegals in on the action, and bolster census numbers and Democrat strongholds so as to add more Democrat seats to Congress. This is a very thinly veiled plan, and if we don't do everything we can to stop it now, there will be no going back. Because you can change policies, you can repeal legislation, but you cannot undo millions and millions of people living in the shadows, yet in plain sight. Our country is like the Titanic. Once the leaks fill the boat, it sinks, so start patching.
Just like that, the second hour is here for OutKick 360. What did everyone do around halftime of the national championship game? What'd you turn over to? 65-7, the final score. I told Chad I stuck with it reluctantly up until like 3 minutes left, and then I flipped over 10 minutes after that to see a little post-game coverage. But Chad, you turned it off to watch something. Don't blame you. Dakich did the same. And many of the OutKick 360 season ticket holders are chiming in.
Yeah, I tweeted this out just to get kind of take a little census of what people are watching right now. What did you turn to at halftime when it's 38-7 instead of the national championship game? Hit us up at OutKick 360 or at the Chad Withrow with your answer. Mike says waited for the Ant-Man trailer and then changed to 1923. A lot of people big fans of the Sheridan verse with Taylor Sheridan because Rocky says he started watching Tulsa King. Good show.
Well done.
I'm all caught up on that one.
I've heard great things.
John Dunn says Reign of Fire, a 2002 movie with Christian Bale, Matthew McConaughey, and Gerard Butler.
That shows true boredom.
Yes.
2002.
You know what I'm going to do? I want to explore the early aughts.
That's what he did.
Cinema.
He just typed in a number, right? So let's hypothetically say you got DirecTV. Type in a number. Whatever's on there is better than this game. Let's watch it.
I think it'd be a fun exercise if you were just, retired at 45 and had all the time in the world to just say, what are the 5 biggest movies of every year? And then go through it. And I feel like that's kind of what, I don't think that was one of the biggest movies of 2002. Maybe I'm wrong. But I feel like that's something you get to. It's like, well, Movie number 5 in 2002 is Reign of Fire with Christian Bale and Matthew McConaughey. Guess I got to watch this now that this game sucks instead of watching the game. Bob says The Recruit, which I believe is a show on Netflix. Davey watched it, so it's a Netflix show. Pam Furr says, last episode of Harry and Meghan. Don't judge me. I watched the Prince Harry interview on 60 Minutes in its entirety. It was a 2-segment on 60 Minutes interview. I find him to be both believable and unlikable at the same time, which is a difficult duo to pull off. I don't really like the guy.
Kind of like the royal family.
Patrick says Predators. He did tell a funny story, which to me was funny, about Prince William throwing him to the floor in a kitchen recently when they had a big argument, and they haven't spoken much since then, which was great. This is a movie I want to watch. Daryl says Devotion. It's on Paramount Plus. Hutton, it stars Glenn Jacobs, who we interviewed in Miami at the Super Bowl.
Yes.
No, it's not Glenn Jacobs. What is the guy's name? It's Glenn something. He's in Top Gun Maverick. He plays the hotshot Iceman type character in that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, and now he's in another movie.
Glenn Powell. Yes.
He's in another film that's very similar to
Devotion.
Top Gun.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, Daryl said he watched Devotion on Paramount Plus, so I want to see that. Matthew says Slow Horses on Apple TV Plus, another show I highly recommend. It's in season 2 of 5 right now. That's available. Mary Beth says Family Feud. Hutton, multiple people, I believe you watched the show, said that they turned to Below Deck at halftime of the game.
I have seen this, and it's a good background visual.
This is fascinating. Someone else says 1923. Amber says The Menu on HBO Max. I hear this is kind of American Psycho-like of a movie that a lot of people are raving about. I look forward to watching that at some point. Many people said they just went to sleep.
Oh, so no one said they stuck with the game.
There's one person who said they stuck with it. It's a Georgia fan that loved the game. How about this? The Mummy Returns? I feel like that had to be a similar time frame of Reign of Fire.
Top movie.
Must be early aughts.
Top film of 2002. Best picture, A Beautiful Mind.
There you go. Russell Crowe. Good one.
So where that was compared to Reign of Fire,
I would
that's
say
not
Reign
a gap
of Fire
from
is
1
more
to 5.
15th on the list. Bad Therapist, The Pale Blue Eye with Christian Bale. Christian Bale showing up twice. One in 2002, one a current movie that's on Netflix where he plays a detective that's at West Point, I believe, investigating some murders, and Edgar Allan Poe is actually in the story. There's a younger actor playing Edgar Allan Poe. Evan says The Northman on Prime Video. Enjoyed that. A great Viking movie.
You told me to see that.
Yeah, I think you'll like it. It's very primal. It's a very primal movie.
All right.
I think you'll love it.
If Prima Nocta's involved, I'm watching. So.
Oh, there's the Viking version of Prima Nocta, which I don't think they have to state Prima Nocta. Pretty sure the Vikings that's their thing. Prima Nocta from the Braveheart, it's just done at all times.
Right.
They don't write it up in some creed or
it's
anything.
Not by royal
it's just,
right.
You just take.
Yes.
You plunder. That's what you do as a Viking.
So Prima Nocta may be, added on. We would joke, Chad and I, about Saban's, contract extension. At some point, you give him the lifetime extension. You can only add other things to it. It sounds like Harbaugh is going to get an offer, Jim Harbaugh, reading the story at OutKick, from Denver for the Denver Broncos, and their opening where Nathaniel Hackett's been out. And right now, among the jobs, that's the clearest cut picture so far with the names that we've seen circulating. Now, some of these, like in Arizona, ownership's going to hire the general manager first before the coach. So their requests have all been for general manager interviews. Meanwhile, the Panthers, with Matt Rule out, they've had the interim there. With Steve Wilkes, he's scheduled for his interview in Carolina, as is Jim Caldwell, the former Lions and Colts head coach. Ken Dorsey, Bills offensive coordinator, they have requested to speak with him, along with Ben Johnson, Lions offensive coordinator, who had a top 5 offense. Jared Goff had his best statistical season in his career this past season. They could put up points, and Carolina wants to talk to him, as does Indianapolis, reportedly. And Frank Reich. Frank Reich has scheduled an interview in Carolina for the head coaching position. Mike Kafka, Giants offensive coordinator, and there are a couple of others there. The positional interviews are taking place too with Cleveland and others, but specifically with Jim Harbaugh, they've already completed his interview officially in Denver, and that's the one to watch at least first because the dominoes fall after that. Who knows what Houston ends up doing? We'll ask John McClain that question.
Jim Harbaugh was 44-19-1 as an NFL head coach. You cannot do better than him for any of these teams. Am I crazy? Just based on his...
It's him or Sean Payton.
When you look at the NFL today, I mean, what is that comparable to in terms of coaches? Kyle Shanahan? And what he's done in San Francisco?
Yeah.
That's probably even better than his record if you looked at it overall percentage-wise. I mean, it got a little kooky late in San Francisco, I know, but his track record is as good as anyone you're going to bring in and hire. I'm surprised there's not multiple teams after him. Now, the X factor in all this is going to be Sean Payton, if he wants to get back in the mix, if someone's willing to trade for him to be a coach. But if I'm going just proven hierarchy of available coaches that you could hire, Sean Payton 1, Jim Harbaugh 2.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any debate about it. That'd be a great hire for the Denver Broncos. It would be a bad blow to Michigan and their program, but I think that would be a terrific hire for someone.
Well, and then the other one, like Sean McVay says he's still undecided on what he wants to do. This still feels like last year where he was undecided. It was for a bit, and then he got the veterans convinced him, hey, come back. You have us here. They end up giving Aaron Donald the big contract extension and money without actually extending years. They just gave him a massive raise, and they tried to run it back, and then all those dudes got hurt. And really, at the end of the year, Sean McVay, by coming back, ends up, crazily enough, he's going to end up getting Baker Mayfield an opportunity somewhere else or there. But you want to make up your mind sooner rather than later if you're not just McVay, but if the Rams. I don't think they just elevate someone internally. I don't think that would be the case. I know they have Raheem Morris there. But I'm also like Liam Cohen's going back to college. He's going to be the offensive coordinator in Kentucky. And by all means, we've seen it before in both sports where you take a job and then you get a better offer and you leave. But the potential of Dallas opening up, the potential of the Chargers opening up based on this weekend's results, if I'm the Rams, maybe it doesn't matter because they have no draft picks to restock their veterans that could be out. If I'm the Rams, I need to know if McVay's back or not because I want to get a jump start on those.
Yeah, I don't think it's too out of the ordinary, however you want to describe it, to just say take a week and decide. If you're Sean McVay, I mean, I look, if I'm the owner of that team and you're paying Sean McVay what you pay him to coach the team, I don't like statements like, well, I don't know, we'll see. I'm not going to say, hey, have me an answer tomorrow morning so we can move on if you're not in this thing. I wouldn't go that far with a guy who just won a Super Bowl the year before. But I do come to him and say, we got to make plans with who we're going to bring in, draft coming up, a lot of different decisions we're going to have to make. So can you make up your mind in the next, month, 2 weeks? How long is it going to take for you to make a decision where you tell us if you're in or out? We're not going to hold it against you one way or the other, but if you want to step aside and go do something else, we're going to need to know in some sort of time frame.
Yeah.
You can't just string this thing out all offseason and get away for a while and then come back 2 months later and decide, oh, yeah, now I'm going to leave.
Well, and it's not even 2 months later to decide. I mean, he's had a year to decide, really, if you think about it. Because he was contemplating, and then he's still gave a lengthy explanation of his thought process for retirement. But, the old saying goes, if you're thinking retirement with the time commitment and everything that's involved, and among the individuals in the league who may have the biggest regret of deciding to come back for another year, it might be McVay at the top of the list. With that being said, I think he's headed to TV. And I think he's like a lot of coaches. They don't want to give up everything in that end-of-season press conference. You can be forthright and honest without saying exactly what you're going to do. And then you allow everything to happen where he makes the retirement announcement and then almost instantaneously the network that's hiring him makes that breaking news.
Yeah, I would just want – I think it's a fair amount of respect on both sides that if you're Stan Kroenke, you go to your coach and say, I'm not going to push you on a decision, but you need to do what's best for us too. We've been very good to you. You've been very good for us, but let's do something respectful and not take too long to make the call. You need to set your own parameters on some sort of deadline to decide whether or not you're going to continue being the coach or not.
And it really, Kroenke and others, they, F them picks. They get the Super Bowl, and now it's just kind of like, well, what do they have left right now? How do you rebuild it? I was thinking about
that yesterday morning when doing some reading on that. That has not aged well, but yet they still have the Super Bowl.
Right. They have the trophy.
So if that's all that you want is go for broke for the one Super Bowl and you don't want sustainability as an organization, then they were successful, and they probably look back on it and think, hey, it was fun to yell that over and over. But I look at it and think, when you're that bad the next year and now you're in the situation you're in, it can't be.
It takes
didn't age as well as they thought.
Mainly because you don't know Stafford's health status. He says he's not retiring, but the elbow held him back last offseason. Now he has the back issue and the offseason ailments again, and you don't know where he's going to be. If they had him coming back and he was playing at the level he was a year ago at this time, they're still that window's still going, right? Because you have Cooper Kupp and you bring in Allen Robinson, and you still have Akers at running back. Defense with some high-paid players, different story. And now it's, okay, how do you bridge the gap if he's not ready to go week one, which may be the case, which is why they even signed and picked up the option for Baker Mayfield. From Sean McVay to Sean Payton, Michael Strahan asked Sean Payton on a scale of 1 to 10 if he was going to coach or be in TV in the next season. Here is Sean Payton's answer on Fox.
Okay. I got two quick questions. One, the flattery was really nice what you said to us. 1 through 10, what are the chances you'll be here next year with us?
7.
Okay.
Okay, 7 good?
Okay.
Likely?
We should ask Eric that question. Okay. And
Eric Shanks.
7. But the second question was, if you are here and if you are not, how important is craft services to your decision? Because you eat a lot of food.
Oh, my God. Listen, hey, your nickname around here is Snack Bar.
Yeah, Sean Payton can get the craft services snack bar anywhere, I think.
Yeah, that could be put into any contract that he signs with an NFL team, too. And he can get exactly what he wants on that snack bar.
What's interesting is he's answered direct questions about what he would do to fix Russell Wilson. And the 7 out of 10, to me, factors in with New Orleans as much as anything. How realistic is it that they're not going to budge on a first-round pick in exchange for him? And he kind of knows it. So that's why it's 7 out of 10 more than it is him really wanting to get back in coaching. He's just got to wait out the contract.
You got to really love Sean Payton to give up that first-round pick.
You
know right away that, boy, this organization really values me if they're going to give up that to sign me to a lucrative deal also on top of it. They're going to show you how much they love you with how much they pay him to be the coach. But on top of that, you're sacrificing a first-round pick, which when you're Sean Payton, you don't want them to have to do that. Because you want your first-round picks when you go to a place and you're going to be a new head coach.
He's paired with the right quarterback, and you give up the first-round pick in exchange for what we were just discussing with the Rams, though, then it would be this year's pick.
I'm not sure there's any fixing Russell Wilson right now.
I'm not even I'm pairing him with Brady. Put him with Brady in Miami, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That's I would trade this year's first-round pick for that.
It's just a crazy world we live in.
But
where
they have their stripped.
You can look defeat and failure in the eye as an NFL coach and see what's on the horizon and just say, no, I'm good. I'm a pretty good-looking guy. I'm a well-spoken guy on football. I'm just going to go make millions in TV and then basically go in front of America in a job audition every Sunday and talk about football. And every owner across the league can watch me talk about football and see how smart I am talking about football. Then they can look back at my overall record, and I'm going to make millions more to be a coach whenever I'm good and ready. It's a great life. Sean Payton's doing it. John Gruden did it. Sean McVay may be about to do it, who is a Gruden disciple. That's good work if you can get it.
Sure. And then Jerry Jones comes calling. He opens up the brink.
Jerry Jones, I saw where Stephen A. Smith was ranting about this today, and I actually agree with him on this. No matter what Jerry Jones says, I believe Mike McCarthy is cooked if they lose.
Oh, yeah.
Monday night. And he's saying things like, no, we're fully committed. Nope. I think he's done, and they're going to go all in on Sean Payton.
Fully committed on winning. That's the caveat to it. John McClain does the same. Fully committed. And whenever we come back, we'll go through the coaching openings, but we'll also preview the playoff bracket.
Even when John McClain signs up for a role as an actor, and he is an accomplished actor, fully committed is what his directors would call his performances.
Oh, no doubt.
John's always fully committed.
You'll have details on some interesting comments from RG3 and the opening now in Houston and what we're seeing from management in Houston. Some other interesting comments about general manager, head coach, and the power hierarchy there. That's next on OutKick 360.
Man, just getting into the craziness. We've got the college football playoff championship game coming up on Monday. But looking back, your opinion, the semifinal Saturday was just so wild, and getting to watch these games and coming down to the wire and the back and forth. Let's start off with Michigan TCU. You got Max Duggan and the way that he played, Jim Harbaugh and his squad. It just seemed like they kind of laxed out there in the middle, and TCU took advantage. And what were your takeaways of how TCU is now playing for a national championship?
I was pretty stunned that it happened and pretty stunned by the way it happened. So I guess going in, if you were to tell me an upset's going to happen, not the craziest thing in the world. I didn't expect it, but it's not a wild concept that a 9-point favorite or underdog could win a game. When you start to see it play out and you realize Michigan has these weapons that have gotten them to where they are, and they are electing not to use those weapons. Inside zone was a figment of your imagination in that game. It just didn't happen. Therefore, using J.J. McCarthy's legs really didn't happen. The way that you had seen it happen earlier in the season, using Donovan Edwards down inside the 5, where they got inside twice and scored 0 points from those trips, didn't happen. So I was sort of incredulous watching how it was unfolding. So here's what's funny. We were at the Peach Bowl, and that game's getting ready to happen, and I was on the field watching warm-ups, and I was standing there talking. Let me whisper. I was standing there talking with Urban Meyer, and he is watching the video board along with a lot of the other Ohio State staffers. Yeah. And so it's kind of always a surreal environment. If you've ever been at that late playoff game, the early game's happening as your game's getting warmed up. And if you're in a stadium that has a big video board, like Mercedes-Benz has that ribbon board, it's on and the players can see it. And certainly the fans are reacting. So when TCU would score, Urban Meyer's just like going crazy, like a pure fanboy, just cheering like openly. And you're seeing some of the players on the field acknowledge it. And you're seeing some of the staffers on the sideline acknowledge it and like cheer. And all the while you're saying, hold on, we got a game that's going to kick off here in an hour. I'm not saying they weren't focused. I'm just saying it was a weird dynamic. But yeah, right. Watching that unfold, and then just you knew what was immediately going to come after that. And that was Michigan lost. Okay, now we start up the Jim Harbaugh NFL rumor train, and that's going on even as we speak. So I was a little dumbfounded, to be honest with you. Not that they lost, but the manner in which they lost.
Is that going to transition? And I know we'll get into Georgia here in just a minute, but we've seen teams in the past where they get all up for one game and they put it all on the line. And then come that second game, and I'm not even just talking about playoffs. I could be talking about regular season as well. Can TCU do that again? Can they have that same type of energy? Can they play that same type of defense, and which was lacking in the third quarter? But I'm saying, can they get up for that type of game one more time?
I don't doubt they'll be up, but there are things that have to happen. You can call it disrespecting TCU if you want to. I fully respect the program, but we got to be real here. We're talking about a 12 or 13-point spread for a reason. There are things Georgia would have to do to assist them. Football happens that way sometimes. It just happened in the Michigan game. Michigan did some things to assist them. Credit TCU for grabbing the game and taking it. If Georgia doesn't do that, no, I don't think any amount of hype or being up will matter, because Georgia's a better team than you. They're that much better than you. If you can start to pull them out into the deeper end of making some mistakes, whether they be self-inflicted or whether you can steal a possession or two, onside kicks, fake punts, etc., all of which I think will have to be pulled out of the bag by TCU in this game.
John McClain with us. Time to talk some NFL headlines, and we'll start on OutKick 360 with John from GallerySports.com on TCU and Georgia last night. That was over in the first quarter. John, how are you? Not sure.
John's muted, it looks like.
Yeah. Try it now, John.
Yeah, it's the first time I've ever done this. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good.
I'm surviving on about 3 hours sleep. I went to the game on Mattress Max jet as his guest, stayed in a suite, sat in a state, watched in a suite. I hadn't been to SoFi Stadium. I knew it was going to be great, and it was. Got chauffeured to games and brand new Range Rovers. It was first class all the way, but there were so many TCU fans with us, around us. I felt terrible for them. I thought they would lose, but I also thought they would play a better game. Everybody thought they'd play better than that. That's the most lopsided in history. And for Mattress Max purposes, he needed them to come within 13 so he could win $9 million, but they didn't. It was a blowout. It was ugly. There were a lot of sad fans walking around in purple at SoFi Stadium, and I was happy for the Bulldogs. They're one of the greatest teams in history to win 2 in a row. Now we'll see if they can make it 3 in a row.
What was Mattress Mac's demeanor like, John, watching that game with him?
But he didn't actually go to the game. He don't watch games he bets on. I don't think he watches them on TV when he bets on big games like that, and because he thinks it gives him bad luck. Plus the fact, you can imagine you got that kind of money in there. I'm guessing you're walking around, you're worried, you're getting is gnawing at you, but he had to have known pretty soon he wasn't going to win that bad. He wins a lot of them, he loses some, but I recorded a video with him that I do usually every Monday. We did one this morning since the game was last night, and it's funny that you can kind of like, hey, you win some, you lose some.
Did you get hit with any of the rain that was coming in sideways into SoFi Stadium last night? I saw reports of rain actually getting to the field.
No, we got hit with rain when our jet landed. We had to switch airports. When we went to the game, when we walked into SoFi Stadium, coming out, it was terrible. And on the jet, when we got on it, it was like being on a ride at a state fair. It went straight up to get through the bad weather.
John McClain with us. John, we see Seattle get to the postseason, and on the opposite side, Miami makes it in as the 7 seed. Seattle's one of the better stories of the entire season, and Chad and I were discussing that going into Sunday Night Football, the storylines that everyone was talking about, and certainly we were too. Green Bay, possibly Detroit having a chance. Turns out that didn't happen for Detroit, but they end up knocking out Green Bay. And here's Seattle, the team that we've all been talking about, except for the last couple of weeks, getting a chance to hit the road and win a playoff game this weekend.
I wrote a column last week with my award winners, and I picked Geno Smith as comeback player of the year. When I look at all the teams and what I thought they might be able to do, Jacksonville improving by 3 to 9 victories was something I had no idea about. And that's why I have Doug Peterson as my coach of the year. But the Seahawks, we all thought they were going to be competing for a high draft choice because Geno Smith was going to be their quarterback. And what in the world did Pete Carroll see in him that would make him trade Russell Wilson? Now, when you saw the draft haul that he got for Russell Wilson, okay, that's a little understandable, but they still needed a quarterback. Couldn't be Geno Smith, and he's about to set the franchise record for yards. I think he already did. And I love a great comeback story. Pete Carroll, he and John Schneider, the GM, knew things we didn't. And I still think it's ridiculous. The Packers lost at home to the Lions to knock them out of the playoffs. A lot of people are glad because they think Aaron Rodgers got his comeuppance. It says so much about the Lions that they had nothing to play for, and they still did it. So it'd be something if Seattle pulled an upset. I don't expect it, but, it's got to be very rewarding for Pete Carroll and John Schneider to have all that grief all through the offseason and now be in the playoffs.
Do you see a scenario where Mike McCarthy is out with a loss this weekend to Tampa?
Absolutely, Jonathan. There are people, despite winning 12 games in back-to-back seasons, for the first time since the Jimmy Johnson era, then, most people think he wants to hire Sean Payton. Sean Payton said on TV that the first thing he's going to look for is ownership. Well, he knows Jerry Jones very well. They're friends, but he also knows Jerry's general manager, and Jerry has final say on everything. Sean Payton doesn't just want final say over personnel. He wants final say over how many pens and pencils are used. He wants control of everything. He could get it in Arizona. They got a coach GM jobs available. They could package them for him. Denver's got a GM, George Payton. The Greg Penner, the CEO, says each will answer to me. Coach doesn't answer the GM. That's a recipe for disaster. But the Cowboys, some people think they got to go to the Super Bowl for Mike McCarthy to win that job third season in a row. And Jerry Jones thinks his team should win at least 12 games every year. So that's probably not any big deal to him. But we'll see, because if they win it, I won't be surprised, even though Dak Prescott has stunk it up lately. And if they lose to Tom Brady and he's hot in the playoffs, I won't be surprised either.
Is there another coach other than McCarthy you feel like could lose this weekend and they're out?
Oh, boy, you caught me off guard with that one. I haven't thought about it a
lot.
Todd Bowles, when he was with the Jets, he won 10 games once and then he got fired. And they haven't been able to run the ball. And I'm not so sure if Bruce Arians was there, they'd be any better. But, if Tom Brady's going to leave, then Bowles might keep his job for a year. There's talk that Byron Leftwich, their offensive coordinator, could be gone. And he's been talked about as head coaching candidate since before Brady got there. So Todd Bowles, I'm guessing, would be a possibility, especially if Tom Brady says, you know what, I think we need to change coaches.
Yes, and final one that comes to mind for me, Staley in L.A. Any chance there?
There was talk that if he didn't make the playoffs again, they might fire him and then make a run at Sean Payton. But Tom Telesco is a very respected GM. I wouldn't see that. And Justin Herbert, who wouldn't want to work with a young quarterback like Justin Herbert? But I think the fact that he did make the playoffs, he had a bunch of injuries at the skill positions. He didn't make as many dumb calls as he did going forward on fourth and impossible situations. I think no matter what happens, Brandon Staley will be back.
John, Robert Griffith III tweeted out the Houston Texans have fired Lovie Smith after 1 year, using 2 black head coaches to tank, and then firing them after 1 season shouldn't sit right with anyone. What do you make of that allegation that's been thrown out there by a former Baylor Bear?
I have great respect for RG3, but using 2 coaches to 2 coaches to tank is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. I don't know how many games Robert covered here, how many practices or meetings he's gone to. I always get a big kick out of people around the country who think they know what's going on when they don't. David Culley was hired. They were 4-13. They fired him because they were going to hire Josh McCown. Then they came to their senses and they elevated Lovie Smith as kind of a compromise candidate. And if they'd have been better this year, Lovie Smith would be here. But they were worse under Lovie Smith. And one of the reasons he had Pep Hamilton as his offensive coordinator. And I thought Pep did a terrible job with the offense. Davis Mills regressed in alarming fashion, and Pep Hamilton had control of everything on offense. I hate to see Lovie lose his job. That's 3 consecutive black head coaches they've had. Romeo Crennel, interim coach, David Culley, and Lovie Smith. And I don't see anybody, when they hired Lovie Smith, giving them any credit for hiring back-to-back black head coaches. But now, of course, they're getting blasted, and they knew they would. And Nick Caserio, the general manager, his job this time next year will be on the line because he's got to make sure this coach is going to be somebody that is good and shows improvement because they're loaded with draft choices. They've got 11, 2 first-round picks, 2nd overall, got 10 next year and got cap room for the first time. So there, and John Mechie, who missed this year because of leukemia, he was a 2nd-round pick. They expect him to come back like an additional 2. So they're in a position to succeed. But yeah, they knew they were going to get that kind of criticism, and they got to do what they thought they needed to do. And if they think it helps them win better, they got it. And the next coach may be black. Everybody here wants them to hire D'Amico Ryans, the 49ers linebacker, who's one of the most popular players in history.
Here. John, you mentioned it. They knew they were going to get criticism, and the optics of it, people are going to look at that. What this shows me is that at least one owner of the 32 isn't really concerned with Brian Flores' lawsuit having any merit to make a move like that. They don't really seem concerned with the optics of it, I guess is what I'm saying. And in a more sensitive time, if they felt like there may be some really bad things in this lawsuit and we could be liable, I would think that they may be more reluctant to fire a black head coach after one season. Maybe I'm wrong, but you bring up a lot of great points being right there in Houston covering that team. Curious to get your thoughts on this. Any chance Josh McCown's name comes back up with Houston after the love affair they had with him a year ago? Do they revisit that?
No. I got a better chance of coaching this team than he does. That was all driven by Jack Easterby, and he got fired. And no, they're not afraid of optics. They can come back and say, hey, we've had a black general manager. They can talk all the minorities they've had. They've had Hispanic assistant GMs, VPs of communications who were minorities, coordinators who were minorities, and the league's not going to do anything to them. And Flores added them to his lawsuit because he said that he would have been hired. No, he was not going to be hired. He's saying he didn't get hired because of the lawsuit, which did not originally include the Texans. No, he didn't get hired because they were hiring Josh McCown at one point, not him.
With Caserio, I know he's referenced a couple of times in a presser, John, that maybe my line of thinking as general manager is not going to pair up well with the new head coach, and I'm paraphrasing, you'll correct me. But does that mean that they would structure the power maybe a bit different if they get the right coach? And I wonder who that would be.
First of all, Caserio has it in his contract. It's a 6-year contract for $5 million a year. He was hired 2 years ago this week. Took over a terrible situation. As I mentioned earlier, what he's lined up as far as the cap and draft choices, he's done a good job. He hadn't done a good job hiring coaches, but there were a lot of circumstances behind the scenes here with these 2 head coaches, with David Culley and Lovie Smith, that were not him just interviewing people and hiring a guy that he wanted to hire and absolutely believed he was the one to help this organization. And I thought Caserio, now, I wasn't at the news conference. I was at the college football playoff, but I read all the transcribed quotes, and I'm writing a column about this on Wednesday for Gallery Sports. Some of the things that he said were absolutely preposterous, and that was one of them, and he alluded to it more. And people are wondering, well, why would he say that when he has final say on personnel decisions and has pointed that out several times in his news conference. They're not going to hire Sean Payton. They'd have to fire him. They're not going to hire Jim Harbaugh, who also would want control of everything. If they were interested in doing that, they should have fired him and paid him 4 years off to go away. But no, I don't know what that man, I've got to check that out and try to find out, because it's not the kind of confidence you want to hear from a general manager. Just like he said, he wants to get more people in the building involved. And I'm thinking, well, you had already 4 or 5. What do you want to do? The PR guys, the groundskeepers? I mean, that was ridiculous too.
A player you know well, in DeAndre Hopkins, there's a report from Jordan Schultz at The Score that Arizona Cardinals plan to try and trade the former All-Pro wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins this offseason. You've certainly seen him traded before for basically nothing in return. Chances are they're getting more in return this offseason than what the Texans did when O'Brien traded him.
Well, first of all, he's coming off his worst season. Started with a 6-game suspension. It ended with missing 2 games because of injuries. I don't know what they would get for him. I don't know why they wouldn't unload him, because he's Kyler Murray's favorite target. And you don't do things to diminish your offensive capacity at a time when a new coach is turning over a franchise. They don't have a whole lot of weapons, and he's one of them, and he's still dangerous. I don't think they'd get a first-round pick for him at this point in his career, but I'll be surprised if they trade him, because then they lost Christian Kirk to the Jaguars in free agency last year. He was their number 2 receiver to Hopkins, and if they're going to trade Hopkins this year, what does that do to their offense? And right now, Kyler Murray is not going to be available for the start of the season. So that could be out there. Maybe he wants to be traded. I don't know, but I'll be surprised if he actually is.
John, let's run through the 6 games, and you give me your picks and why as we start with NFL wildcard weekend on Saturday. Things kick off with the Seahawks on the road in the division against the 49ers.
No way I'm picking against the 49ers and Brock Purdy. My goodness, the guy had another great game. It's unbelievable. Everybody, and I've talked to a lot of former players about this, has expected him to, okay, he's been playing really well. They've been protecting him with their calls and their defense and their running game. He's going to have at least one bad game, and they better hope it's not in the playoffs. So you know what? They better hope it's not in the playoffs. But their defense is great under DeMeco Ryans. They run the ball well. They're getting healthier. Nick Bosa is going to be a runaway defensive player of the year. And I think they will beat the Seahawks pretty handily. Seahawks were a nice story. They needed help from the Lions and the Packers to get in the playoffs. Geno Smith's a great story. He didn't play real well in his last game, but I don't see him doing well against this defense.
Quick aside, John, on Brock Purdy. Are we witnessing another Jeremy Lin Sanity type story of a shooting star, or is Brock Purdy here to stay as a star quarterback in the NFL?
Isn't it interesting, Cadillac, because they traded 3 number 1s, got one back, so essentially 2 number 1s to get Trey Lance. Nobody thought Trey Lance was the prospect that Kyle Shanahan did. When he got to play this year in preseason against the Texans, he was mediocre. He started against the Texans at the end of last season. He's okay. 49ers won at Levi Stadium, and then this year he got hurt. Nobody was like, wow, he's going to be worth it. And here comes Brockster, Mr. Irrelevant, and he looks like a legitimate NFL quarterback. So they're going to have competition next year but with the guy that Kyle Shanahan loved and the guy Kyle loves. And that's going to be a great storyline for them. Jimmy Garoppolo, of course, will have a new zip code.
John, I'm trying to move quickly here, but how many more starts would Purdy have needed to win Offensive Rookie of the Year?
Well, he'd had to have been there, I think, at least 3/4 of the year to be in line for that award. My pick, Kenneth Walker III, the running back for the Seahawks. He was in a bunch of games. I think he started 10, and that's the one I picked. But Purdy, I think, would have had to have started 3/4.
Yeah, I think Kenneth Walker III didn't even start until week 6. To your point.
Yeah, he just came off the bench.
Yeah. All right, so we've got the 49ers advancing per John. Jags hosting the Chargers, and an intriguing one between Herbert and Lawrence.
Boy, I'm not going against the red hot Jaguars. I did last week, and I lost. So I'm sticking with Trevor Lawrence. They're on a roll. They're at home. I think it's great for the fans. They've been great fans for a long time, even the ones that bothered to show up. So give me Duval.
Chargers are 1-3.
Duval County.
Chargers 1-3 in outdoor games this year. I don't know if that factors in Florida or not. But there you go. Florida, by the way, with 3 NFL teams in the postseason.
Good for them. I don't know how much longer that's going to last.
Big year for jorts.
Yeah, yes. Dolphins, Bills. Dolphins get in, but, man, they're banged up.
They played their best game in a loss at Buffalo until Tagovailoa was healthy. No way they're going to win this game. I don't care who plays quarterback, because the Bills are America's team right now because of what happened to Hamlin.
Vikings hosting the Giants in the 3:30 Central, 4:30 Eastern matchup Sunday on Fox.
Vikings had a big-time improvement under first-year coach Kevin O'Connell. A lot of people want the Giants to win, and maybe they will. The Vikings are, have a negative point differential, but I'm going with Minnesota. They've done a great coaching job and a great playing job for the Giants. They don't have a lot of playmakers. They don't have a lot of stars, and I think the Vikings will do a good job against Saquon Barkley.
Roquan Smith just got a big contract extension in Baltimore. Now we await what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson saga, both this week and this offseason. Baltimore back on the road. They are facing the Bengals again for the second consecutive week, and they start on Sunday Night Football. Sunday Night Football is the matchup between Baltimore and Burrow.
Now, I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to play next season. He certainly hadn't helped his contract status, wanting guaranteed money like Deshaun Watson got. And I think even though their defense is really, really good, that trade for Roquan Smith was tremendous. I don't understand why the Bears, with $100 million in cap room, let their best defensive player get away. Now they need a defensive player desperately. Think how good they'd be if they took Jalen Carter or Will Anderson and they had Roquan Smith right behind them. But maybe that's because they're the Bears. And I think Cincinnati will win. Cincinnati's won, like 8 in a row? And I think they're on a roll at just the right time.
Yeah, the second hottest team only to San Francisco, who's won 10. Tampa Bay hosting Dallas, a rematch from week 1.
This one intrigues me because Dak Prescott has not played well. Cowboys got good running game, good pass rush. They force a lot of turnovers. Buccaneers can't run. The three of us could run better than the Buccaneers are running, but it's Tom Brady. He's at home. He's in the playoffs. If he's got the ball last, he's going to win. I want to pick the Buccaneers, but I just think the Cowboys are too talented. They're not going to lose 2 games to the Bucs in one season. I'm going to Dallas on the road. It's been 26 years since they won a Super Bowl. Think how much of the nation's population wasn't born last time the Cowboys won a Super Bowl. Well, it's not going to be this year, but I think they're going to beat the Buccaneers.
Every quarterback except for Mahomes was less than a year old at best in the AFC.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Yeah, the last time Dallas won. That's crazy. Mahomes 27, and everyone's younger than him in the AFC.
I'd like to say I hadn't been born at that point, but that's not quite true. I was 45.
Yeah, you were hanging at the White House, I heard. You were hanging at the White House.
I just started hanging out with you guys.
That's right, you had. John, thank you as always. Get some rest, 3 hours sleep, from yesterday to tonight. I'm sure you're about to hit the hay, so enjoy the games this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, I got 4 more talk shows to do. Jonathan Chadlack, thank you guys very much. Congratulations. Congratulations to Bulldogs.
Yeah, hey, and GallerySports.com as well, doing great work. And you can catch John and Mattress Mac on there.
The 3 of us ever run the football, like John said. John, you can lead block for me anytime. How about that?
Thank you,
can be my
Cadillac.
lead blocker
Thank you.
anytime. Thanks,
I don't
John.
know. He's losing some weight. I see he's dropping the pounds, though. I don't know if he could be the lead blocker anymore. It's like Taylor Lewan.
That's more, and I'm not very fast now, but that's more, I feel like I may be slightly more nimble than John running it. That's no knock at your weight, John, or your. That's just more, I would rather the ball be in my hands than yours, is what I'm saying.
When I move, I look like a bronze statue.
No doubt.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, John. John McLean there. EA Sports removing something from the Madden video game. We've got that, plus an apology involving the same topic. That's straight ahead on OutKick 360.
Back to the Christian thing in the broad picture. Your father, how many kids, if you don't mind saying, do you have several kids? One kid?
Seven children.
You have 7 children, so you're a big family man. I did not know that.
Yes.
How many sons? Because this is what I kind of want to dig into.
I have 5 sons.
5 sons, perfect. As a Christian man, how do you feel? Like, what is your job when it comes to raising young men in modern America?
Number one, to teach my boys to know and love Jesus. That would be their primary identity in life. To everything else being completely secondary to that. That is number one. Number 2 would be to make them capable men, right? To make them well-rounded, to make them, able to handle themselves, to make them strong physically, able to fight, able to shoot, able to protect their future, their own families. A great quote, Robert Heinlein, and I'm going to butcher it, but I will attempt it anyways. He basically says that a man should be able to plan an invasion, change a diaper, cook a meal, build a house. He just goes down this list of you should be able to do all these things as a man. And then at the very end, he says specialization is for insects. And I did not always think that. All right. I mean, there was times in my life where I didn't care about learning how to weld or be mechanically inclined or any of these other things. I was like, oh, I just want to be a commando. I just want to go and shoot and do hard stuff. And that was a mistake. I mean, I think I've said this before on, I did 2 ship deployments, 2 ARG deployments as a young frogman. And honestly, I was arrogant at the time. And man, here you're on a ship, which was kind of miserable. And I had a bad attitude about it instead of, because I'm like, I should be on land training more. And instead of going, okay, this is where I'm at. Yeah, I don't have to like it, but there's all these master machinists and welders and guys that are, in charge of charts and navigation, to navigate across the globe. And here I could have, if I would have showed just a little bit of interest, those guys would have been happy to be like, oh yeah, I'll teach you how to weld. I'll teach you how to run a lathe, all these things. That now I'm like, man, I want to learn all that stuff. I want to be able to do everything. And some of that's reinforced now. Kind of, we live out on a little bit of a farm, so you do need to be able to, when stuff breaks, you need to be able to fix it yourself, and so there's a lot of value in that. So I want, number one, I want my boys to know and love Jesus, and then number 2, to be capable. It's actually, so we do a program called Father-Son Ministry, where it's gone through different iterations. Currently, the way we run it is you show up, we pray, we say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we start training. And that was very deliberate right there, that, hey, we honor God first, then we honor our nation, and then we start to train. Most of the time we do jiu-jitsu. So that's been just super cool, having the boys go from it just looking clownish, them rolling around, to, man, they're, some of those boys, I will actually, break a sweat rolling with them now, and they will absolutely catch some guys with triangles and arm bar. They're actually learning jiu-jitsu.
I felt like we've heard one of the more contrite apologies in the NFL in a long time from Alex Highsmith, Pittsburgh Steelers player, with a celebration this past weekend where he was like mock CPR in a celebration. Now, we've seen this throughout the league. Players down, lay on his back after a sack, and another player comes in a celebration and, like, revives him, right? But Highsmith meant he just wasn't thinking. He's done this in the past, and then after the game, he's like, I just don't want people to think of me that way, and I was doing anything intentional, because I would never, ever, 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 ever want to do that intentionally, and I never, ever would do that. And he goes on to, apologize to Hamlin and the family, because we're less than less than a week removed from that. I just want people to know I have nothing but love for DeMar and his family. When that happened, I was shook for a couple of days. Me and my wife, we were watching the game. We immediately saw it, intentionally started praying, intentionally prayed for him. Goes on to say, I just want people to know there's nothing intentional about the CPR celebration. It was never planned. None of that. I believe him.
I believe him too.
Madden and EA Sports, they're removing that celebration. How much do we see it in the game? It's a celebration on a video game. They're removing that from the video game. Whether or not it's warranted, whatever. But I don't know if people were clamoring for that to not be a celebration.
Cancel culture strikes again. We got to get rid of the CPR celebration now.
I think they just didn't want to be potentially mocked for it whenever the next version of the game comes out.
I mean, first off, it doesn't matter enough to either be included in the game or not. So I guess just remove it because it doesn't really.
I think, to me, they don't want someone doing the celebration on Damar Hamlin who's in the video game.
Well, and they don't want other people to do it, seeing it on the video game and start mimicking it.
The visual of it, they're removing it altogether. They're saving themselves the headache.
Whatever.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I'm not a gamer.
The good news is Damar Hamlin's doing very well. Headlines next.
Joe visited our southern border for the first time in his career yesterday. But when I say southern border, I mean that very loosely, given he saw and did far less as president of the United States than any one of our Fox News border correspondents see and do on any given day. But how nice of them to clean up the homeless encampments, by the way. Wouldn't want the reality of the situation to aesthetically F up the optics, right? But this whole sham trip is too little, 2 years too late. He should have just met with the cartels and said, "You're welcome," since he's funding them and funding them well. Since he took office, over 5 million illegals that we know of have entered our country to live in the shadows and suck it and we the taxpayers dry. This president nor his border czar Kamala give a damn about the invasion, and neither do the so-called Republicans who signed on to that $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill that funded the invasion, but not the protection of our southern border. And now the Republicans have the House majority. If they allow another penny to go to DHS without a border enforcement mechanism, let God strike their political careers dead on the spot. Securing the border is not that hard, folks. Trump was well on his way to doing just that before Joe came in and undid it all. So let's start out by impeaching Mayorkas, who not only lied about that whole whipping scandal, but has sold Border Patrol agents down the river every single day since he's held that post. This is elementary school stuff. First, we need a physical barrier that keeps these illegals out. Yes, the wall. States should not be forced to use shipping containers to protect our country while the Democrats leave it defenseless and encourage the free-for-all. Then, we need to send more judges to the border to process these BS asylum claims on site and on the spot. 9 out of 10 don't qualify for asylum, so turn them around and send them right on back, because I guarantee you they'll stop trying to come here under false pretenses if they know they're going to get turned around the moment they fraudulently step foot on our soil. Next, reinstate Remain in Mexico, another great way to de-incentivize people with BS phony-ass asylum claims from making the journey. That'd also make Mexican officials rise to the occasion and step up to the plate. Guess what? Mexican citizens don't want their cities and streets burdened with migrants either, but right now they just send them right on through, so we have to deal with it. So cut off that luxury and Mexico will play ball. Threaten tariffs like Trump did, and they'll play the flippin' World Series of ball, believe me. But the Democrats don't want to fix this because they designed it. They want to pump illegals into this country, give their corporate donors a massive low-wage workforce, use their beloved mail-in voting system to get illegals in on the action, and bolster census numbers and Democrat strongholds so as to add more Democrat seats to Congress. This is a very thinly veiled plan, and if we don't do everything we can to stop it now, there will be no going back. Because you can change policies, you can repeal legislation, but you cannot undo millions and millions of people living in the shadows, yet in plain sight. Our country is like the Titanic. Once the leaks fill the boat, it sinks, so start patching.
Final hour of the Tuesday edition, OutKick 360. Glad you're with us. Hutton and Withrow with you. 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad, Nathaniel Hackett among the coaches out, one and done. And
what a tenure it was.
It
Denver
was.
with him.
You know, and he got the gig after a great job. Well, he was the offensive coordinator in Jacksonville whenever they went to the AFC Championship game. And then, of course, he was with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Matt LaFleur says he's open to Hackett rejoining his staff. And that's where, I mean, Hackett's a good coach. Not a good head coach, but a good assistant coach. And I think that's a good landing spot, all things considered. And the question would now be, okay, now what with Aaron Rodgers? And Aaron Rodgers was not on with Pat McAfee today. McAfee said they're rescheduling because he's in meetings both today and tomorrow with Green Bay. So they're including Aaron Rodgers in the future planning, and he's got to make his determination on what he's going to do with his future, both in Green Bay and in the league.
I, for one, cannot wait until we get another piece about Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers playing ping pong together.
Yeah.
And how that's going to magically bring back Aaron Rodgers to MVP form. I don't see it. I mean, maybe there's something there. Certainly the results are what they were with Hackett and Aaron Rodgers. I obviously believe it has a lot more to do with Aaron Rodgers and not as much to do with Nathaniel Hackett. But, I mean, if you're Matt LaFleur, I think you definitely look into it. Here's the other thing about Matt LaFleur. They have another season next year like they did this year. I don't know that he's going to be the coach in Green Bay. He is very much on the hot seat moving into next year, especially if Rodgers isn't a part of it and they take a step down with Love, let's say at quarterback. Then they're going to decide we got to go in a different direction. So LaFleur not on stable footing right now. Rodgers, future unknown with him. He just took a big step back from a play standpoint this year. So, yeah, why not bring in Nathaniel Hackett? I'm sure that'll fix everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's something LaFleur pointed to play calling as, you know, he mentioned that in the past off season, whenever they were inconsistent, he's pointing to play calling and what's, you know, the structure of the offense. But ultimately, it's Rodgers, you know, who's making the calls at the line of scrimmage and doing things within LaFleur's system. And it meshed well a year ago, number one seed, that didn't mesh well here. They were the top scoring offense, second only, to Dallas, I believe, a year ago. Really struggled. But they found a run game, got a two-headed monster in Dillon and Jones. And when you trade away Devontae Adams, you got problems. The 4 highest paid quarterbacks this past season, not in the postseason.
Well, look at the 2 notable teams that traded away their best receiver and 2 of the best receivers in the game. Packers, Titans.
Yeah, the caveat is Kansas City.
True. That's a good point.
Patrick Mahomes just passed for 5,000 yards for the second time in his career.
Yeah, well, that's the difference is the quarterback
and
there.
40 touchdowns.
But I would say that Travis Kelce, you could make the argument as to who's the most reliable passing target. He's not a wide receiver, I understand. Tyreek Hill was certainly their best wide receiver, but the other two teams, the drop-off from Tyreek Hill to Travis Kelce isn't as severe as the drop-off from Devontae Adams to next best in Green Bay and A.J. Brown to next best in Tennessee.
But Kelsey's putting up tight end numbers, not wide receiver numbers. And he's leading the league there, and he's top 10 in receiving. But you have otherworldly numbers from both dudes in Miami. But Hill was incredible this year. Both guys deserve mention for Offensive Player of the Year, though. And then I think Mahomes is going to be the MVP. So, the other quarterbacks, though, top 4 paid. Of course, Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, and Deshaun Watson for the 2022-23 season.
Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, it's got to get a lot better than the little glimpse we saw at the end of this season. If you're a Browns fan, you better hope that that's just a lot of rust that you witnessed with him, and now that he's played a little bit, knocked that rust off, he's going to have a complete offseason to prepare and practice to be the guy in Cleveland, that it looks a lot better. And you mentioned Kevin Stefanski as a possible name to watch to be fired in Cleveland. Instead, they end up firing their defensive coordinator, and Stefanski's still there. That's one that's got to pick up next year for the Browns.
Agreed.
I say that, but what's their recourse with this contract that he has?
Nothing. I mean, they've got to make it work.
It's just got to work.
Yep.
It's a little bit similar to Russell Wilson, honestly, and everything they gave up in Denver for him. They just got to find a way to make it work.
Kyler Murray, too, that they've admitted in Arizona they're going to include Kyler Murray in the coaching search. Biggest playoff droughts that continue. The Jets were on pace to end the longest current playoff drought that is now at 12 seasons. And then Zach Wilson had to come back into the picture due to Mike White's injury. Denver trying to end their playoff drought of 7 seasons. Doesn't feel that long to me.
It's crazy. Denver. It feels like yesterday Peyton Manning was riding off into the sunset with the Super Bowl. Detroit was right there. And they lost some, as good as their offense was, their defense early on, not good. And at the end of the year, they lost in a couple of shootouts. But they beat Green Bay. They keep them out. But the playoff drought continues for Detroit. They're the closest of this pack to me. Carolina and Atlanta are in a bad division. And which one can improve the most this offseason, given the fact that Carolina is going to have an opportunity to pair a new head coach with a quarterback of their choosing. Atlanta, they've been rebuilding through the cap and now have the best cap structure that they've had since Arthur Smith arrived there. 5 seasons each for Atlanta and Carolina. I think of that group, Detroit has the best opportunity, just as I see it right now and how they're built and structured. And given the fact that the offense is just rolling along, they need some help defensively. They've got some help coming with Hutchinson going into year number 2, and he was great in his rookie season, but that was pretty much it. Of those teams, they need more. I don't think there's any doubt Detroit's in the best spot right now, roster standpoint, play-wise, the way they finished the season, their record this year. I also think that they're in the strangest spot from I don't know about that. Carolina, you clearly know what they need to do. They got to draft a quarterback. They're the team I'm circling as a possible mover up into that number 1 spot with a trade to go after Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. What is Detroit going to do ultimately at quarterback? Jared Goff had a great year. Yeah. He does a good job leading that offense. But have you seen enough with Jared Goff to think that this is the answer at quarterback for them with Detroit? Now, yes. They can end their playoff drought with him, no question. They need big help on defense. Their offense is not of any issue here. And keep in mind, last year... Isn't it crazy, though, that he just had his best statistical season? Goff did. Jared Goff was an afterthought in the Matthew Stafford deal. Yeah. That it was they're getting rid of a guy who can't win big. Yeah. And now he's going to go be a pedestrian quarterback for the Lions who never win. And now suddenly we're talking about Jared Goff as the franchise quarterback for the Detroit Lions, a team that's on the move and that's moving up in the NFL. It's just crazy to think about that based on when those two guys were traded.
Yeah.
No, it worked out for LA, too.
But also, like, we're a year removed from Dan Campbell calling him out, saying, hey, I want more leadership from our quarterback. We've got to have that. And then not only did they have that this year, he's not turning the football over this year. His touchdown interception ratio was really, really good. And, they win healthy in the backfield, great options, and they have one of the top offensive lines in football. That's where their investment around Goff has been. Yeah, so I like the way they're structured. They just need a couple more pieces defensively, and they need those guys to hit that one or two the same way Hutchinson did. That guy's a beast.
He is, and they've got some great young options at wide receiver. I love the Lions. We came into this season, the preseason, I remember talking about how they didn't quit at the end of last season under Dan Campbell with a terrible record. Yeah. And on the final day of the regular season this year, they have their playoff hopes dashed, and they still don't quit. And they go out, and I think it's a pretty shocking outcome with everything the Packers had to play for, that they went in there as a touchdown underdog and found a way to win.
I didn't see the entire presser post-game. I saw clips. Did Dan Campbell cry? I would have set the over-under at, minus 9,000, yes.
Jamal Williams cried. I saw his on-the-field post-game interview. He's a very emotional guy. He went through a range of Hollywood-type emotions.
Yeah, he did.
During that interview.
Campbell,
I thought Aaron Rodgers almost cried. He got slightly choked up talking about everything after the game.
And he was walking off with Randall Cobb and was not happy with the cameraman who got in front of him. He said, "Get behind me." At least I think that's what he said to him. McAfee will find out. And he was walking off with the guy, one of his best friends in football.
Speaking of saying a lot, the pregame pep talk from Kirby Smart was leaked last night. That'll get your blood going when you hear that. I mean, it's a lot. We could never play it on this.
I feel like we've heard.
There's a lot of expletives.
I feel like he gets his leaked quite a bit. Haven't we heard these before from him?
Yeah, there's been a half. There's something Dylan Taylor, one of the OutKick producers, was showing me earlier. There was something during a practice or a workout where they're in the indoor facility, and he's on video. And it's a very similar speech that he's giving.
It's a Wolf of Wall Street speech.
Yeah, I mean, you could apply that to anything in life, his speech that he's giving. It's not very specific about a game plan against TCU. It's just we're better. We're not scared. We're not going to play scared. We got nothing to be scared about, and we're about to go bleep them up in this game. Very simple. You tackle the guy with the ball, you knock them down, and you stay on your feet the entire game. That's the approach. And he says it's simple. And what's crazy about what he's saying is it is simple for Georgia. Get better players. Get those players to play exceptionally hard and fast, to understand what they're doing, and you're going to win pretty much every time out when that happens. Kirby Smart's done an incredible job of getting guys to buy in, not having a lot of personality issues in the locker room, and guys that are out there are playing as hard as anyone in college football, and it shows.
I've got some safe for work audio and video from Kirby Smart that's coming up in a few minutes. And just the overall philosophy and the makeup of how simple it sounds, but how few can pull off what he's done in the short amount of time at Georgia. J.J. Watt, Pro Football Hall of Fame career. Darren Ravel, less than a Hall of Fame moment, stepping in front of the special needs children.
Look, we don't go out of our way to come on this show.
What were you guys talking about?
Just ridicule Darren Ravel at any time. Darren Ravel makes it so easy to ridicule him. Yes. Just with everything that he does. There's a video of Darren Ravel rushing out in front of J.J. Watt to give him an emotional hug in his final game, and he's keeping a group of children that he's scheduled to meet with waiting as Darren Ravel runs out in front of him.
Okay, well, J.J. Watt with a dominant final home game against Tampa. They didn't win that game. But the Hard Knocks episode of that week, the in-season one with the Cardinals, I saw a clip where it was just chronicling everything of that week where he didn't tell anyone he was doing it. That was his final home game. He just tweeted it out on Christmas night. But the week leading up to that game and the conversations he was having, you can tell, like, he knew he was done. He knew it was coming to a close, and none of his teammates actually knew at the time why they were having the conversation while waiting on practice to begin or resume or whatever. Where he's like, hey, hey, man, why'd you get in the game? He's asking one of the young players, why'd you start playing football? Quick little answer. And then without even being asked, they're just staring off into, whatever, watching special teams probably. And he's like, yeah, I wanted to be the high school quarterback, but I wasn't cool enough. So my goal was to always be the version of that dude that everyone looked up to in my high school. And then I became a star at the high school. I didn't play quarterback, star at the high school. Then everyone wanted to be a Badger where I grew up. So I wanted to go play for the Badgers. And then, so on. And now he's sitting there going, and now it's been, a career where I look back and it's been unbelievable. Then one of the defensive coordinators or assistant coaches on defense was asking him, how many sacks you have? I don't think this guy knew that Watt was hanging it up. And he goes, 100, 111, starts going through all the favorite sacks. It was a cool episode for a season that was a disaster in Arizona. And then to have it all chronicled in the post game where they lose that game because Brady had the final comeback down 10 in the fourth, and then to not be able to get the stop where they set up the field goal for the win. You see him taking a knee in the locker room and having a moment to himself. It was cool, but also sad. And he still had 2 games left, but he was crushing it that night.
You said 111 sacks probably was right on at that time. He finishes with 114.5 in his career, and he had 2 in his final game. It's crazy to think I'm 40 years old, and I feel like J.J. Watt has been a force in the NFL my entire adult life in his 12 years. Just that time that spans from 2011 to now.
Yeah.
I feel like he's just always been a presence. I mean, when you hear – because we don't talk a lot about J.J. Watt since he went to Arizona because they haven't been that good, right? He's not been the same player, but he's still been productive.
Yeah,
he's not been
the
defensive player of the year the way he was in Houston. He's certainly a Hall of Fame player and a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I just think about his career, and I think he was just so omnipresent in the league. You say the name J.J. Watt, it feels like he played for 20 years in those 12 years. That's a great compliment to him as a force in the National Football League.
And, I mean, the TJ is on the same path.
Absolutely.
And the paid, he's either the highest paid defensive player or he's second now to Donald after Donald's boost last offseason. And it's about to be Nick Bosa. But, by the way, the episode there starts because it's Brady week. And the episode starts with the do's and don'ts when trying to defend Tom Brady. And the most attentive dude in the room is J.J. Watt. Think about that.
Yeah.
And, it's just like you want to force him to run. He doesn't want to run, and he's going to take the quick pass, less than 2 seconds. You got to do this. And then it leads to mic'd up, and he's back and forth with Brady the entire game.
Love it.
Quarterback sneak, your favorite play, was a great mic'd up moment, too.
The quarterback sneak, the most underutilized
and
play
Brady's
in all of
great
football.
At it, the best at it.
I do like how the quarterback sneak, though, has now progressed to a quarterback gets shoved from behind by the fullback, or you send the tight end in motion, and they just hover behind the quarterback, and when the ball snapped, they're going to shove them forward.
They don't even practice it, really. Because most of the time on third down and short, these guys are in shotgun. The coordinators are putting these guys 6 yards in the backfield.
But I do think that when it gets to a yard and a half closer, we're seeing – I'd like to go through and see the stats on it. We're seeing more of these quarterback sneaks because coaches – and it looks like a play they don't even practice because really only three people are moving.
They really don't.
It doesn't take a lot of effort from the tackle.
Yeah.
It's the center, 2 guards, and a fullback or an H-back tight end that comes in motion behind them and then rams the quarterback into the first down marker. That's essentially the play, and it really doesn't take much practice to pull off.
I can't recall seeing a quarterback practice a sneak when I've seen the practices.
Well, you also don't want them to get hurt.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it, right? You just hope they know what to do when it's time to call it. Just hold on for dear life and stay on your feet as you get shoved for the first down.
Brady going through all the offensive linemen on the interior this year in Tampa, he was practicing it.
Yeah.
Because he's the best at it. Meanwhile, you got tiny Kyler Murray, who has he ever been under center for a quarterback?
That's great. Does he go under center for anything?
Right. Like,
now that the Cliff Kingsbury era is over in Arizona, I'm just very underwhelmed with them offensively. I mean, it wasn't all bad with him. I understand that, but
7 or 8 games
I was
last year
expecting a lot more.
Yeah, me too. Now the talk there is that Cliff Kingsbury had reserved himself to just being out. They shared the same agent, and whatever was going on behind the scenes there. Remember, this past preseason, it was a weird vibe. Like I was almost out of spite. He was having Kyler call plays in the preseason. Remember this? And with the headset on.
Yeah.
And now
it's like it's not so easy, is it, big boy?
Yeah.
Type deal.
Yeah. And he was at the end of the season, according to reports in Pro Football Talk and others, he was just kind of I'm out of here. It's not going to work out.
Now all of the scuttlebutt is that he is going to be Nick Saban's next offensive coordinator.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
the Saban rehabilitation
so
program.
Where does Bill O'Brien go?
Again. Right now, he's not going anywhere. I mean, he's still Alabama's offensive coordinator until he gets the offer that he wants to leave for.
I mean, they've been talking there behind the scenes about wanting Bill O'Brien to get back to the league as soon as possible.
That's another guy on this list, though, that I look at and I see his resume and I think, I'd hire him. If he's not the general manager and he's just paid to coach.
Yeah.
That's a guy I'd bring back. I would hire Bill O'Brien to coach in the NFL again before I would college.
Well, and that's the talk today in New England. They have to get an offensive coordinator by title there. And that would make a lot of sense with the Alabama guy from the last couple of seasons pairing up with Mac Jones and back with Bill Belichick, to me. It also makes sense if you want to pair here in Nashville with Vrabel, with their ties in Houston.
Yeah.
And keep in mind with this, too, Bill O'Brien had GM power when Vrabel was working for him in Houston. He was making those trades, making those moves.
If he comes to Nashville as the offensive coordinator, he's not going to have GM power. I'll tell you that much. That job will be Mike Vrabel's. Probably Mike Vrabel's alone. I really believe Mike Vrabel will have the veto power. It's going to be a collaboration, but I think tie goes to Vrabel with whoever the general manager hire is.
No tie last night, the national championship. We give our thoughts on this absolute – it was more than a beatdown. This was chalk outline first quarter.
It was, we all love Cinderella and the Cinderella story until Cinderella gets murdered by a monster at the end of the story, if that's the way the fairy tale ended. That's what happened last night. Georgia being the monster, TCU being Cinderella.
But we still had the two competitive semifinal matchups, and we'll discuss what we'll remember about this college football playoff. Plus, we'll hear from Kirby Smart on OutKick 360.
Man, just getting into the craziness. We've got the college football playoff championship game coming up on Monday. But looking back, your opinion, semifinal Saturday was just so wild, and getting to watch these games and coming down to the wire and the back and forth. Let's start off with Michigan TCU. You got Max Duggan and the way that he played, Jim Harbaugh and his squad. It just seemed like they kind of laxed out there in the middle, and TCU took advantage. And what were your takeaways of how TCU is now playing for a national championship?
I was pretty stunned that it happened and pretty stunned by the way it happened. So I guess going in, if you were to tell me an upset's going to happen, not the craziest thing in the world. I didn't expect it, but it's not a wild concept that a 9-point favorite or underdog can win a game. When you start to see it play out and you realize Michigan has these weapons that have gotten them to where they are, and they are electing not to use those weapons. Inside zone was a figment of your imagination in that game. Just didn't happen. Therefore, using J.J. McCarthy's legs really didn't happen. The way that you had seen it happen earlier in the season, using Donovan Edwards down inside the 5, where they got inside twice and scored 0 points from those trips, didn't happen. So I was sort of incredulous watching how it was unfolding. So here's what's funny. We were at the Peach Bowl, and that game's getting ready to happen, and I was on the field watching warm-ups, and I was standing there talking. Let me whisper. I was standing there talking with Urban Meyer, and he is watching the video board, along with a lot of the other Ohio State staffers. And so it's kind of always a surreal environment. If you've ever been at that late playoff game, the early game's happening as your game's getting warmed up. And if you're in a stadium that has a big video board, like Mercedes-Benz has that ribbon board, it's on and the players can see it. And certainly the fans are reacting. So when TCU would score, Urban Meyer's just like going crazy, like a pure fanboy, just cheering like openly. And you're seeing some of the players on the field acknowledge it. And you're seeing some of the staffers on the sideline acknowledge it and like cheer. And all the while you're saying, hold on, we got a game that's going to kick off here in an hour. I'm not saying they weren't focused. I'm just saying it was a weird dynamic. But yeah, watching that unfold, and then just you knew what was immediately going to come after that. And that was Michigan lost. Okay, now we start up the Jim Harbaugh NFL rumor train, and that's going on even as we speak. So I was a little dumbfounded, to be honest with you. Not that they lost, but the manner in which they lost.
Is that going to transition? And I know we'll get into Georgia here in just a minute, but we've seen teams in the past where they get all up for one game and they put it all on the line. And then come that second game, and I'm not even just talking about playoffs. I could be talking about regular season as well. Can TCU do that again? Can they have that same type of energy? Can they play that same type of defense, and which was lacking in the third quarter? But I'm saying, can they get up for that type of game one more time?
I don't doubt they'll be up, but there are things that have to happen. You can call it disrespecting TCU if you want to. I fully respect the program, but we got to be real here. We're talking about a 12 or 13-point spread for a reason. There are things Georgia would have to do to assist them. Football happens that way sometimes. It just happened in the Michigan game. Michigan did some things to assist them. Credit TCU for grabbing the game and taking it. If Georgia doesn't do that, no, I don't think any amount of hype or being up will matter, because Georgia's a better team than you. They're that much better than you. If you can start to pull them out into the deeper end of making some mistakes, whether they be self-inflicted or whether you can steal a possession or two, onside kicks, fake punts, etc., all of which I think will have to be pulled out of the bag by TCU in this game.
Total domination by Georgia last night over TCU. OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network.
Hun, have you ever had a shirt that makes you colder when you wear the shirt than as opposed to you being shirtless? I feel like when I wear this shirt, it somehow traps coolness on the shirt, and it makes me freezing cold. Clothes are supposed to be protection from the outside world. I wear this shirt, and I swear to you, if I took this shirt off and went shirtless the rest of the show,
you'd be warm?
I would be warmer than wearing this shirt. This shirt somehow, while beautiful, this shirt traps the cold air. Like, I get freezing cold wearing this shirt, and there's no other shirt has that combination. It's incredible.
The only shirt to me that makes it colder is whatever that material is that you have to wear at the hospital for any type of surgery or procedure.
Oh, yeah. The scrub-like material.
Then that is, to me, bone-chilling cold.
Yeah. That, and you're putting, bare feet at times on that hospital floor, just picking up everything.
This brings up another great one, grocery feet. Another popular one of Chad.
Grocery feet is the kid that's in the grocery store, usually, where I come from, some form of redneck, that's in a grocery store that's allowed to run barefoot through the store. And the stores that I grew up going to had a very grimy, hard surface. And you could pick those kids up by their ankles and look at their feet, and you'd see brown bottoms of the feet. We'd call that grocery feet. And if you had grocery feet, you knew you're going to have to scrub them at night. It's a common occurrence in the South.
Yeah, no doubt.
Now, I can wear this in the summer, too, and feel great. Right?
I would say in the north as well.
The reverse is true. If I get a little breeze in the summer and it's hot outside, I stay cool in this shirt because it traps cool air into it.
The undefeated national champs in the BCS and college football playoff era. Alabama's done it twice. You see some familiar faces and names. Florida State's done it twice. And Georgia, they are a game away from doing it too. Since that 2020 season where it was, riddled with all the COVID mandates and vaccinations and trying to play the season and all that, they've lost one game since then. It's crazy.
It's crazy to think about their level of dominance. And I think back to the late 90s. It's going back to 1990. Going into last night, there were 3 teams that had repeated. Nebraska won 3 of 4 when you count the split title in 97.
Yes.
So it was those 3. Then you had Alabama did it in 2011, 2012. And then you had Georgia the past 2 years. There was also USC. I was having to, because I saw this stat last time, thinking, who was the other one? USC had a split title in 2003. It's weird to think about there still being a split title back in 2003, but that was the case. They split it with LSU. There was a BCS champion, and there was, in 2003, an AP champion, apparently. There were 2 different teams, and then they blew out Oklahoma in 2004 to win it. And then 2005, they were going for their version of a three-peat when they lost to Vince Young in Texas in 2005. But where does Georgia rank now among those? I think it's not just the 2 in a row. It's propelling into the future. This is so sustainable for them that they lost 15 draft picks and it didn't matter. They were arguably better this year than the year before.
Yeah. Not as dominant on defense, but better.
But much better on offense.
Yes.
Stetson Bennett was much better.
So get this. So here is post game last night. Kirby Smart, and in preparation for TCU. By the way, if you want to hear Kirby Smart referencing the preparation for TCU, that audio from pregame is available. We just can't play it because if we did, we wouldn't be able to air it, and it would just be one long beep. It would be like the beep in Chad's home, or what it used to be before the batteries expired in your kid's toy.
It belongs in a Scorsese film, and not on this show.
But here is post-game, Kirby Smart discussing how even the scout team for Georgia would have won that game last night.
Because our defensive scout team did the most unbelievable job. When we got TCU, I called them all in. I had the coaches meet with them. We made them meet and become this defense, and we said, we're going to do it better than they do it. You're going to watch tape. You're going to sit in here. You're going to learn how to do it. We had a guy, C.J. Allen, who was number 6. He did it as good as they did it. We had Collins, big 57. He did it as good as they did it. We had guys be their guys and do their defense exactly right. Until the last day we were walking through in there, they were giving an unbelievable look. That set our offense up for success. The scout team makes a difference, and we had a hell of a scout team to give these guys a look. Thank you guys so much for the coverage this year.
Congratulations.
That's how he ended it last night, was discussing the scout team, pointing at Stetson Bennett, saying the dominance came from the preparation because, and he's saying this without saying this, we were challenged more in practice than we were in the national championship game. That's crazy.
Stetson Bennett also, I think 2017, going that far back, maybe after, he was a scout team quarterback as Baker Mayfield when they prepared for Oklahoma in his first year. I think that was his first year. Then he went away for a year and then came back. 2017, that's the year they lost to Alabama in the national championship, beat Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl. He was Baker Mayfield getting them ready. 2018, he went to junior college, came back 19, 20, 21, 22. Yeah, that was him then. But full circle. Then you're standing up there you're sitting on the podium with Stetson Bennett, who's had this amazing career. And those guys he's talking about, I'd like to go do a Google search on the names. Yeah. I bet they're 4 and 5 star guys on the scout team.
Who do you say, C.J. Allen, number 6?
These are guys who are going to be stars at Georgia. These are highly, highly rated recruits. These are not walk-ons. If I had to guess, he's saying those guys' names because they are freshmen that worked on the scout team that he knows if they stick with it are going to be future Georgia stars.
So here earlier, this is prior to the game, off-season. This appears to be like a seminar of some sort, but he's taking questions from Bulldogs fans and media members probably there as well, covering this because it's on Twitter. Here is Kirby Smart discussing the mentality, the mantra, the method for which they go about their business and why they're starting to win at such a high level.
To be successful, to be great, the thing people have in common, they realize they really don't have a choice. There's one way, the right way, the hard way. There's no shortcuts. So when we get freshmen in, so many of them are not trained in the fact that you really don't have a choice. At 7:30 when the alarm clock goes off and you've got the 8 o'clock class, everybody tells you have a choice. You don't have a choice. Because if you want to be a really good player, you're going to get up and go to class. If you want to be different in your working environment, you've got to do something that somebody else is not willing to do. That's what successful people are. Successful people are the people that are willing to do something that somebody else is not. That's what makes you different. And that's what we drive home all the time, because once they get and acknowledge that, it's a lot easier to be successful when they get to that point.
It's not just about talent. It's about getting the right talent that is motivated to be great. Guys that come in and they're motivated not just to get to the league, but to be great. And not every Georgia player pans out. Certainly not. But comfortable is what he's talking about. Comfortable does not help you win. Just ask Dan Mullen, who got comfortable at Florida. Ask Ed Orgeron, who got extremely comfortable in recruiting at LSU.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so post-game, he's talking about, he's asked about the three-peat, and he's like, look, he's referencing this, saying we can't get comfortable. We have to reinvent some things offensively to make sure we are adapting to the times. And that's why it sounds very elementary, what he's saying. There are only, how many programs, Jet? 4 or 5 that could legitimately do and execute what he's talking about with A&M. A&M had the greatest recruiting class ever.
Can't do it.
He can't.
They're not
Jimbo
there.
Fisher can't get his guys to do that.
I mean, currently it's Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. Clemson's fallen off a little bit, but probably could institute the same thing. Here's what I keep coming back to with Kirby Smart, and that looked to be some sort of presentation in front of the School of Business at University of Georgia that was sponsored by someone that he was speaking to. Everything he's saying and everything he's doing and talking about sounds an awful lot like Nick Saban. The grand experiment finally worked. Of all of the Nick Saban protege hires across college football, none of them could beat the master at his own game. I'm not saying Kirby Smart is Nick Saban right now with 2 national championships, given Saban's longevity, given that he's done it at multiple places. Don't mistake it for that. But right now, he's better than Nick Saban. What he's built at Georgia, repeat after me, is better than Alabama right now. Not by a long shot. Alabama's still very, very good and nationally relevant. But it finally worked. It took a combination of a defensive mind that was trained under Nick Saban, that played in the SEC at Georgia, going back where? To his alma mater, to Georgia, finding a program that you can get the talent you need in a 100-mile radius around your campus for the most part. Once that happened, it clicked, and finally the formula worked. And now you've got Kirby Smart, who's got Georgia every bit as good, if not better, than Alabama. And that's something we had not seen. Jimbo Fisher is not Nick Saban. He's never going to be Nick Saban. I'm comfortable in saying that at this point. Look at all the other failed assistants of Nick Saban that could not beat the master. Kirby Smart's doing it. He's doing it. And David Pollack saying it last night to Nick Saban, he's right. Georgia has taken over all of college football right now.
Well, and it's why Auburn went with their coaching hire. because the head-to-head matchup with Saban. I mean, that's what that came down to ultimately. And look, here's the other part of what Kirby Smart's done. He recruited 4 and 5 stars at quarterback and then recruited over Stetson Bennett again. After the guy said, I'm going to go away and earn a scholarship and come back, they still recruited over him. They didn't want to play him. And then ultimately, he at least played him. He didn't placate to the 4 or 5 star in order to just make sure they were happy. Those dudes went, to what, 2, 3, some 4 colleges by now.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they're back-to-back national champions with Stetson Bennett. Kirby Smart discussed his 2-time national championship winning quarterback last night.
He did a change of protection, made an elite throw. He schemed up a run, ran a midline run, which nobody runs. He ran for a touchdown. He's got a tackle that's like a tight end out there in Broderick. And when you got a quarterback that can do the protections and check things and know what the defense is doing, but yet still beat you with your feet, you got a high-level quarterback. And people have slept on Stetson Bennett for too long. He needs an opportunity to play for a long time at the next level.
And he's gone from a guy who had no shot at being drafted to, I don't know how you don't take a flyer on him as a backup quarterback situation next year in the NFL.
Hutton, we were talking near the break about comps. I think Davey Hudson posed the question, who's his comp in the NFL? I think I finally came in, and I'm open to suggestions about something that could be better. But the one that popped in mind that finally stuck was Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think Stetson Bennett has a chance to be a longtime pro and a starter. Fitzpatrick was a backup for a lot of his career. He was a starter for a lot of his career, too. I think that's the skill set of Stetson Bennett. Bennett's a better runner, but Fitzpatrick was a sneaky good runner also and scrambler in the league. I think Bennett's better as a runner would be the one difference, but maybe he can be that in the NFL.
I don't know how, with the other quarterbacks that Smart has recruited to Georgia, that Bennett is being argued that he's not one, given the results on the field. And Justin Fields is, of course, an NFL talent. But Jacob Eason and Jake Fromm and what they've done, and there are those out there that are saying Stetson Bennett's going to be in banking instead of the NFL a year from now. Come on. The guy wants to play. He's going to get his shot. And if you're an organization with some really bad, there are like 17 to 18 legitimate starters in the league, right? And then the rest of the starters are made up of backup quarterbacks. And then those backups to those guys aren't good enough to beat out the backups who are starting. And then there's a practice squad quarterback who no one's ever heard of. And every 2 or 3 years, there's a story like Brock Purdy. And this is one of the greatest college football stories we've seen with Bennett going back to back and his story behind the scenes. There will be a team that's picking him. I don't know if it's day 2. I'm not going that high. But Chad, he's going to be on a roster, and chances are he's going to play a valuable role in some way for that locker room.
I'll give you another quick comp for Stetson Bennett, Baker Mayfield. Both have a similar backstory of being overlooked in their career, starting as a walk-on or being a walk-on at some different point. The difference is Stetson Bennett has no chance of being the number 1 pick in the draft, like Baker Mayfield, but I see some similarities in the way they play, both those guys. I think Bennett, though, is less he's less of a daredevil than Baker Mayfield, which actually helps him. Right?
Well, he doesn't put his body in the way.
Yeah, he's okay, though, at times. If it's just not there, he's going to throw it away or he's going to take the sack a little bit more than Baker Mayfield would. I'm not just talking about from a health standpoint. I'm saying from not throwing the big interception or doing something really dumb. He doesn't have that level of edge to him that Baker Mayfield had, which is a good thing for
I'm
Bennett.
going through the list of quarterbacks that come to mind. Case Keenum comes to mind for me with him.
That's a good one.
And it's the size, right? It's Keenum was putting up tons of numbers at Houston in the mid to it was like 2007 or something to about 2010, 2011. Yeah, but he's listed at 5'10", whatever. I'm talking about
Alex
Bennett.
Smith even's like 6'1". You know, he's not a really big guy. Wasn't in his playing days.
Yeah,
I can see a little bit of that with him.
You know, the other factor, and I do think this plays a factor in where you draft a player, is age. And he's going to be 26 for his rookie season. There are all the AFC quarterbacks right now. The starters, I saw Stetson Bennett is older than 19 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. That's why he's also not being mentioned with Baker Mayfield and other top quarterbacks that have a similar storyline that end up in the first round. You're not taking a first-round pick at 26 at quarterback because he's already in age-wise. He's in contract too.
Well, and again, if the NFL doesn't work out, Stetson Bennett Ford has a nice ring to it. I mean, the dude's going to own a chain of car dealerships all over the state of Georgia.
Probably already does.
Or he's going to be a 15-year NFL backup.
Yeah.
Or he's going to do both. And he's going to do all of those things. I mean, he's got a bright future ahead of him in the state of Georgia, no doubt about it. He's a legend. There's going to be a statue of him somewhere in that state at some point soon.
Yep. Would you rather have 2 competitive semis or 1 competitive national championship? We answer that question next on OutKick 360.
Back to the Christian thing in the broad picture. Your father, how many kids, if you don't mind saying, do you have several kids? 1 kid?
7 children.
You have 7 children, so you're a big family man. I did not know that.
Yes.
How many sons? Because this is what I kind of want to dig into.
I have 5 sons.
5 sons, perfect. As a Christian man, how do you feel like, what is your job when it comes to raising young men in modern America?
Number 1, to teach my boys to know and love Jesus. That would be their primary identity in life. To everything else being completely secondary to that. That is number 1. Number 2 would be to make them capable men, right? To make them well-rounded, to make them able to handle themselves, to make them strong physically, able to fight, able to shoot, able to protect their future, their own families. A great quote, Robert Heinlein, and I'm going to butcher it, but I will attempt it anyways. He basically says that a man should be able to plan an invasion, change a diaper, cook a meal, build a house. He just goes down this list of you should be able to do all these things as a man. And then at the very end, he says specialization is for insects. And I did not always think that. All right. I mean, there was times in my life where I didn't care about learning how to weld or be mechanically inclined or any of these other things. I was like, oh, I just want to be a commando. I just want to go and shoot and do hard stuff. And that was a mistake. I mean, I think I've said this before on, I did 2 ship deployments, 2 ARG deployments as a young frogman. And honestly, I was arrogant at the time. And man, here you're on a ship, which was kind of miserable. And I had a bad attitude about it instead of, because I'm like, I should be on land training more. And instead of going, okay, this is where I'm at. Yeah, I don't have to like it, but there's all these master machinists and welders and guys that are, in charge of charts and navigation, to navigate across the globe. And here I could have, if I would have showed just a little bit of interest, those guys would have been happy to be like, oh yeah, I'll teach you how to weld. I'll teach you how to run a lathe, all these things. That now I'm like, man, I want to learn all that stuff. I want to be able to do everything. And some of that's reinforced now. Kind of, we live out on a little bit of a farm, so you do need to be able to, when stuff breaks, you need to be able to fix it yourself, and so there's a lot of value in that. So I want, number 1, I want my boys to know and love Jesus, and then number 2, to be capable. It's actually, so we do a program called Father-Son Ministry, where it's gone through different iterations. Currently, the way we run it is you show up, we pray, we say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we start training. And that was very deliberate right there, that, hey, we honor God first, then we honor our nation, and then we start to train. Most of the time we do jiu-jitsu. So that's been just super cool, having the boys go from, it just looking clownish, them rolling around to, man, they're, some of those boys, I will actually, break a sweat rolling with them now, and they will absolutely catch some guys with triangles and arm bar. Like, they're actually learning jiu-jitsu.
OutKick 360. Hope everyone's having a great Tuesday. Big thanks to Dan Dakich and John McLean for joining the show. If you missed portions of the show, you can always download the show wherever you get your audio, and that includes OutKick.com. Click on shows. You'll see all of the great programming podcasts that will drop down, and you can find OutKick 360 each and every day, as well as just searching out on YouTube and subscribing that way. Chad, would you rather have two very competitive playoff games in the semis or one great national championship matchup? Because we either get one or the other, it seems, every single year.
So ratings-wise, by the way, last night it got up to 22 million at one point, but it is the least watched national championship game in the college football playoff championship era going back to 2014. Got up to 22 million. Final quarter hour, 10 million. So more than a 50%, 100% drop at that point to the end of the game with that score. Hutton, to answer your question, 2 is greater than 1, and I would not do anything to trade out that New Year's Eve day. Just a full afternoon and night of football that was terrific.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have the 2 semifinals be something great, and both those games were objectively great, as opposed to having one championship game be great. In the past, we've had the championship game be compelling, and then the semifinals have been bad. I'll take this, honestly. If you just told me that I'd love all 3 of them to be awesome, but if I had to choose one or the other, I'll take the 2 semis on New Year's Eve to be better.
You know what my determining factor is? One of those games for us was over the holiday or on the weekend, right? Yeah, the Saturday. Mm-hmm. And in this case, I just don't get into a Monday night championship game. If the championship game's on a Saturday, my answer would be different. I would want to build up all the way
It's a good answer.
to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl Sunday is on a Sunday. College football on Saturday for a national title. To me, the hype, the build-up, I would be all in on that. It is a very – and I realize this is also an odd year to say that there wasn't much hype because you had the Damar Hamlin news going on the same week that was dominating everything. But, you just kind of had to remember on a Monday morning, oh, by the way, NFL, let's see, the playoffs are set, and, yeah, the coaching changes are being – and, oh, there's a national title game tonight.
Yeah, and I think that, the NFL does cooperate with college football on different things and timing of events. I think they would move those 2 Saturday games. If the timing worked out the same way, if you're looking at week 18 of the NFL season, I think they'd move those 2 Saturday. If you're worried about conflicting with the NFL moves those 2 Saturday games to Sunday. Every game's played on Sunday the final week. And then you got a Saturday night all to yourself, college football national championship. I see nothing wrong with that.
Well, even if they don't move it, it's not like ABC or ESPN has the Saturday games in the NFL, right?
No, they did this year.
No, but I'm saying not every year.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. I just think it would be cleaner if the NFL, as a trade-off for having this free feeder system, minor league system to their league that college football provides for them, that they would just move those 2 games to Sunday, do whatever you want to win them from a national perspective. But then Saturday is for college football national championship game. Saturday night is the game. That's the way to go.
And now you've got the college football playoff expansion coming up in a year where we'll have a better view of the first round on campuses, and you've got all the matchups for round 2, and then
quickly
they're going to make these ratings up.
Alex also brings up, I don't know why I didn't just say this, another good idea. Just have the games at noon and 3 Central Time on Saturday leading in to the college football championship.
Yeah.
Just bump them up and don't have a primetime game. How great of a day that'd be if you had 2 good NFL games leading into the college football national championship at night.
Kind of like the Rose Bowl with Bills-Bengals, which was Monday night.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Same network.
Love it. I'm all in. So
let's
just get ESPN on board.
Back at it tomorrow. Hope you'll join us for the Wednesday edition. Clay Travis will join us. Hope you will too. We start at 3 o'clock Eastern right here for OutKick 360.